And now we are going to see the Druid in there and the Rogue, but then the Warlocks on both sides, sort of along with that Demon Hunter. And I was going to say I'll double check. I already know what it is. They're both playing Quest Warlock because there's only Pavel who's crazy enough to submit Zoo.
I was going to say, I thought you were going to forget about it then for a second. Like, oh, of course it's Quest Warlock. Like, no one's going to submit a different Warlock deck this week. No. There is, in fact, 2 different Warlock decks this week. Pavel is still playing Zoo, and it's just the old list as well. He hasn't really changed it to adapt to the Scrap Imp nerf. He's just playing the old-fashioned list. But I don't want to talk about that right now. I want to talk about Quest Warlock, because this deck is just sweet. I don't care which side of the fence you fall on, as whether this deck is the nuts, whether it's the best deck in Hearthstone, whether it's a huge bait. I just think it's sweet. This is the kind of deck that I would, love to see more of hanging around in Hearthstone. It's the kind of deck where if it gets powerful, it tends to fall under the nerf bat from Blizzard, and it doesn't hang around too long because they tend not to like these kind of cool card draw heavy, combo heavy, burst your opponent out of the game kind of style decks. But this is just the nuts. These are the coolest things you can do in a card game, is just making all of your cards work together into one powerful thing that ends the game.
I thought you were going to stop it there and be like, yeah, it's just kind of cool decks Blizzard don't like. Just full side, Blizzard don't like cool decks. We'll see. But for me, I do agree with you that I do agree with you though that I think we were talking about this before the broadcast, but for me, I think its power level might be a little bit over exaggerated due to the hype about how much fun people are having with it. But what isn't under doubt is the deck is super fun, and it's hard to pilot. But for me, in the right ways, right? It's not just super strange. It's everything makes sense when someone explains to you why you should do something or why you play this way, why you make this turn.
Right.
It's not just why you have to do weird things all the time. It's no, this logic's out to make for the game plan. So very interesting, especially interesting to see. I would say not the mirror match. I think this is, again, just another mirror match that at least I'm not a fan of. But the other matchups are huge because we are going to see it potentially try and take down aggro, which I think is the big weakness right now.
I think the mirror match is awesome, Raven. I think it's incredibly interesting.
Not the mirror matches I play, Sol.
Okay, fair enough. But yeah, I do think it's really interesting this week because obviously we talked a lot about the 7-1 or 8-1 that Plot Twist Warlock went last week, and it looked like just the best deck in the world. But that's when the players who had it were ahead of the curve. That's when it was an unexpected deck. That's when it wasn't something that people were building their lineup to compensate for. This week, we're seeing a lot more of the decks that are a challenge for Quest Warlock come into people's lineups because they're expecting this as an eventuality because so many people were hyping up how good the deck is. So that means I would certainly expect to see a significant drop in Quest Warlock's win rate this week. But I think you have to contextualize it in that if Quest Warlock comes out of this week with a 50% win rate when a lot of people are paying very close attention to it, and there's 0 Priest, which is the one matchup that you really, really, really do want to play, then it would have done pretty well.
Yeah, and I believe during Asia Pacific, which was just before us, Quest Warlock went 2-5 today. So we'll see how that shakes out once more sample size kicks in. One thing I will say in defense of the your expectation of the win rate to go down, which makes perfect sense, by the way. I do agree with you. I will say as well, the players at bringing it have a much better grasp on the deck, because it is a deck that you do need to learn, because there are some plays that aren't maybe as straightforward as you think. There's some key cards that affect the mulligan or affect the keep rates and so on. And I think the more players that jump on this deck, because it's become very popular this week, the better the players that are going to play it are going to be. So we'll see how it goes out here. We are going to go into game number 1. Kolento is on the Quest Warlock, and Zhym going to go on
Raven,
this team.
I'm going to let you finish in a minute, but Kolento does not have a quest equipped.
Okay, well, let's get right into it. No quest here for Kolento.
So,
choose. So, yeah, I was going to say, you've talked a little bit about this, at least between us casters.
Yeah.
As to as and when and how and why. So you take this one away. It's all yours, mate.
So, this is something that I heard whisperings of and sort of tried out myself. And I don't particularly like it. But there is a particular way that you can build the deck where this becomes better. Like going down to one questing explorer, for example, is giving yourself the ability to mulligan away the quest in certain matchups where you just feel like you have to fight for the board and win the board. But in this case, I believe, just double-checking Kolento. Yeah, Kolento does play 2 questing explorers, which means he has 2 river crocolisks in his deck now, potentially, the way that he's played this out. So I rooted around and asked a lot of players' opinions on this, and for the most part, I got back the same feedback, which was this was something that they tried, but after trying it, they didn't really feel like it ended up being correct, even when they are playing 1 questing explorer overall.
It's going to be very interesting to see how it plays out, because I feel I may be on the less popular side of the fence on at least this matchup, where I think the Warlocks could struggle a lot. Whereas I believe we've seen previously, or even just on stream, some people playing, is like, oh, the Warlock got to get a big Moag off, so the Demon Hunter can't catch up the damage. I believe Demon Hunter feels like it has almost infinite damage anyway. It's more about if the Warlock can actually either secure the board in their favor with the help of Abyssal Summoner or Crazed Netherwings. Just a reminder, Kolento's running only 1 Abyssal Summoner in his deck.
Yep.
And I feel like the Warlock does have to finish the game. They can't just be like, I've healed, you've ran out of damage, because Demon Hunter just doesn't. So I think this is a much tougher matchup than people make out for it. And even if it doesn't pay off all the time, I don't know how often you actually get the quest off and it actually helps you in this matchup specifically. So even with Kolento running 2 Explorers, I actually don't mind him throwing the quest to just have a better opening hand.
Oh, fight me, Raven. So, again, even if you were going to mulligan the quest in this matchup, right? The deck that you do that with plays 2 Abyssal Summoners and 1 Questing Explorer. Not the other way round, because you're not... Like, your goal then is just to remove a few threats, play an Abyssal Summoner, and then win the board, and then play your second Abyssal Summoner later, and just lock out the game. If you've only got 1 Abyssal Summoner, how are you winning the board with this deck? This just isn't going to work.
With that...
Okay, sure.
It doesn't have a dragon to activate it, of course, so it wouldn't work this turn with the coin. But yeah, I do agree that generally my emphasis on the deck needing to actually win the game and not just try and heal its way out is reliant on the Abyssal Summoners doing the work. One way the deck can heal it out, it's something we've not really talked about because it's not. I don't think it's that represented in this region. Is there's a build of the list with Kartuk defenders instead of Abyssal Summoner. And that is much better against the aggro decks, the Hunters and the Demon Hunters and so on, because the heal is just so much more, and you don't have to tap as much to make the Abyssal Summoner work, because that's the issue, right? If you have to use loads of removal in the early game, Abyssal Summoner kicks out like a 5/5 taunt on curve, and then, well, it's just a 5/5 taunt that you paid 6 mana for a lot of the time, which is a struggle. But yeah, we'll see though. Kolento sense demons, which is scary in itself, because it's not going to heal him. Okay, it kind of heals him, but kind of doesn't.
I mean, it heals him for a lot, because he draws 2 Moags and he has a spare Nether Breath in hand even after this turn. So yeah, it's not immediate healing, but I still, respect the play for sure, just to get both Moags into his hand here.
Yep, the key is he has enough time, doesn't he? He's not like he's on 10 health and he's making this play. He has to, he has the time to double Moag and Nether Breath. Oh, just gonna be... play the Glade Man.
Demons? Demons.
He just saw a Nether Breath, so I guess he's saying that you don't have further removal for this, but he's still vulnerable to most things doing this. He's still vulnerable to second Nether Breath, he's still vulnerable to Dark Skies. The one thing he plays around effectively is Crazed Netherwing, which he might be afraid of. But he just saw a coin play on the previous turn that didn't involve a Crazed Netherwing coming down.
I will say as well, if Zhym sees the other Nether Breath this early, is he just okay with it? Has the skull to follow up with resource-wise, and both Nether Breaths are just gone forever.
Yeah.
Our enemies will fall.
I do like that. I mean, generally, TJ and myself tested this matchup a fair bit, and there's a River Croc, by the way. We reached the conclusion that, or at least I did, I don't know whether TJ necessarily agreed with this, but I reached the conclusion that as long as you had Skull in hand, you could kind of just keep throwing out your board over and over again and just asking for the perfect removal time after time from the Warlock. Because if it didn't happen, you were great, you won the game, you pushed a bunch of damage. Right. If it did happen, then you just replace your old board with a regimen of better men and just hit him in the head again with an even bigger board on the following turn, right? Like, you just keep on going.
I think that's where my thought pattern comes from with some of the aggro matchups as well, is that, especially Demon Hunter, it can just keep going. It just doesn't... Like you said, with the skull caveat in there as well, helps massively, of course, but it does just keep making waves. It does pump out tons of damage. There is a Acidic Swampooze in Kolento's deck. You can beat one of these Warglaves. You can't really beat the second one. You can't really stop Metamorphosis. That's just all like banked damage. The big question for Kolento is, can he sort of stutter heal through it, if that makes sense? Or can Zhym just draw it so far apart that he has time to put up a taunt in the way of the weapon and then go heal from some of the meta damage? Because if it all comes together, especially now with 2 Nether Breaths played from Kolento, he just can't heal that amount of damage in the short amount of time he'll have to. And he goes like
going to rip the plot twister.
Yeah, it goes the same for Alex Childs as well, right? This isn't really a matchup often where you can Alex yourself and be comfortable, because normally if you're in that state, you're under tons of pressure anyway.
They have to be basically exhausted of resources before you make that play. Kolento's hand did not improve a great deal there. Of course, without the quest equipped, the plot twist is really just to cycle the healing off the Arnasi Broodmothers, as you saw, but also just when you have a feeling that your hand isn't doing very well, you just need to replace them with different cards, which in this scenario, he didn't really do that well. He did get the full healing, but he didn't really get a plethora of good options. Did find that ooze off the Mortal Coil, though, which could end up being huge, of course.
This Warglave's already done its job, though. The plot twist getting 2 Broodmothers was actually a really big deal, honestly. There's also those weird points where, of course, there are playable cards here, but when your opponent is threatening damage but doesn't play minions, it's kind of weird as the Warlock. Because suddenly, well, I have Dark Skies, which should have cleared this board, but there's no board to clear, but I'm still taking damage. Feels horrible.
Raven, how much damage is this?
All of it. I didn't actually count physically. It can't be, right?
Well, no, he can't fit anything right now because there's a Frozen Shadow Weaver and a Clay Bound. But it's getting close with that that Altruis in hand. Also, a lot of the time as Warlock or against Warlock, it's sometimes okay to leave their minions up as well. They normally trade away regardless, or they soak Dark Skies damage. Again, he's going to trade this off. He did have the option to do all of this and put an extra, 4 damage to face, and just ignore the Broodmother. Beaming Sidekick coming down. So we've got an 8-card hand here from Kolento. So Rain of Fire would deduct 3 from this board, so it starts off as 13 and go down to 10. So yeah, he's kind of playing around Dark Skies very effectively, but obviously the Twisting Nether is here just an option for Kolento to be able to clear all of this up. He did use a lot of that Altruis hand to make this huge board as well.
And honestly, Zhym's not got such a great follow-up, has he?
No.
Check out Zhym's list as well. 0 Crimson Sigil Runners, only 1 Sightless Watcher, and the 2 Vulperas, but 0... what's the card? 0 Spectral Sights. So the actual cycle is more reduced than you'd see from some of the other builds. This does damage to him, though.
It does. He might want to use Dark Skies instead for that exact reason.
But Dark Skies Broodmother, but then that pretty much is all of your healing gone, right?
I wonder.
At least he knows that Kayn is dead, which means these taunts stick. At least, Zhym has to deal with them. I guess Altruis is the next best thing to Kayn. But for the Demon Hunter, obviously. But knowing Kayn's gone means these taunt walls sometimes get the job done. But again, Kolento only running 1 Abyssal Summoner means that he less consistently puts up big taunt minions.
Right. So that is going to be the play from Kolento. It's so hard just even adjusting like my perception of this matchup to thinking about like, you know, greedily tapping in order to get your quest done at some point so you can tempo swing back the other way. When that's just, it's just not a relevant factor in the scenario that Kolento set it up as.
Is that just bad ordering?
Weird ordering?
Zhym?
Yeah.
Like, why? That was always playable, no matter what. Why not take your pick first and have the extra mana?
Big damage coming through once again, and as you mentioned, Kolento is just straight up out of healing right now.
And this Netherwing, it's not gonna. Oh, it's just gonna kill him, isn't it? A part of me wondered whether, I'm not saying it would have really changed the outcome of the game or won Kolento the game, but I wondered if Kolento almost had to play Netherwing last turn because it would have cleared the board, and any later means certain death, and then he maybe uses the Netherwing to kill any further push on the board, and then back it up with the Broodmother. Right.
Yeah, like you can kind of argue that, you know, 3 damage is 3 damage, right? And if you take it on turn 9 or turn 10, what's the difference? You've taken the 3, but the difference is the 5/5.
Yes.
Right? That actually has an impact. But he did play a 4/6 taunt on the previous turn, so I think he was comfortable that he was competing from board and was going to be able to do that anyway. But yeah, it's tough to say. Metamorphosis off the top. Zhym does not even need the Skull of Gul'dan, and in honestly something that I was not expecting to see this week. It was something that I prepared for because I heard people talk about it. Every piece of advice and every piece of personal experience that I had from top players and from my own ladder experience and from our own testing said that Mulligan Quest was nonsense in this deck. So I was just waiting for the most Kolento move of all time, where Kolento was going to mulligan away the quest and still get there, which it really looked like he was getting somewhat close to doing at various points in that game. But I think the problem that you run into is, one, even if you were going to do it, Kolento doesn't have the list for it. He plays 2 Questing Explorers, so you're deactivating them completely by not having your quest. He only plays 1 Abyssal Summoner, which is your best vanilla Hearthstone card in the deck, right? If you're just going to play like
a card,
if you're just going to play like 1 for 1, play my guy, get on the board, win the board, Abyssal Summoner is the best card for doing that if you're not playing quest. Secondly, Kolento got control of that game and then cast Plot Twist, which is generally how I've tried to fight the matchup, but with the quest in play, right? You just play for board, play for board, play for board, play for board. Oh, okay, if I cast Plot Twist this turn, it will complete my quest. Great, I'll do it now, and then my quest is done. At that point, Kolento can be tapping into 0-cost Giant Dragons and 0-cost Zephyrus and 0-cost Dragon Queen Alexstrasza. In that exact scenario, he was only 1 card off being active on the Highlander cards. I think he had 2 Soulfires remaining in his deck that was blocking him. And also, just in the interest of balance, I do have to present the argument that obviously mulliganing for 1 more card in the early game does help you secure the board state, even if you're not playing a 1-drop. Even if you're not playing a 1-drop in your deck, which this deck isn't, just having 1 more early removal option does help you secure board more often. So you can present the argument that if Quest was kept, he wouldn't have been able to cast that Plot Twist in a secure enough spot anyway. But personally, I think that's nonsense. I think that is a Quest matchup just as much as every other matchup is a Quest matchup with this deck.
Right, and not only the quest throw or the quest keep, but just the matchup in general I'm excited to see more of, because again, I think we sit on either side, 2 different sides of the fence on this one, so I'm happy to see better players than us play more matchups of that out. So I do believe we are going to go to a break, I think, while we get ready for game number 2. So don't go anywhere, we'll be right back.
Be handcuffed to a Grandmaster for 1 month.
If I would be handcuffed to one person for over a month, it would probably be tight because he's just way too positive. Even if it looks like something bad could happen, you look at Tyson and he just talks about his tea and everyone is good again.
I think I'm actually gonna pick Bunny. I can learn a lot about chemistry.
handcuff with another Grandmaster, I will choose Firebet because we will still have fun. It won't matter.
That would be Zalei, because I think he would be able to break the chains.
I would probably pick Seiko, because Seiko is very calm, doesn't speak too much, so I wouldn't be annoyed.
I think I would say Seiko because, like, he's not speaking, so he would be quiet.
Yeah, Psycho. Yeah, Psycho is. I like to speak with him.
I'll just go with Seiko.
Okay.
We can all have him.
We are back with our match number 2 of Grandmasters here over in the European region. We've only got 4 matches today. It's going to be a little bit quicker than usual for us, but we're with you all weekend, so don't you worry. There's plenty of Hearthstone and plenty of high-stakes Hearthstone coming up as we move on through this weekend. Zhym and Kolento. Zhym just taking a win with his Demon Hunter in the Quest Warlock matchup, and chalk that up to another loss for Quest Warlock over the course of this weekend at least. And I'm very interested because we do have to, or I think the player base has to offset the hype at the deck being super fun and feeling great when you play it and it being hard and difficult to play versus its actual quality as a deck. So as you're shaking your head pretty heavily at me, we'll see how it plays out over the weekend and see how it performs.
Raven, once again, I will let you finish in a minute, but that was not a loss for Quest Warlock. I'm afraid I'm going to have to correct you on that one.
Just because he didn't play the quest. What's the deck archetype? Quest Warlock. Did Kolento
Control Warlock.
No. Did Kolento lock in the deck he submitted? Yes, because we played the game out. He wouldn't be allowed to not do anything else. Quest Warlock took a loss. Lorinda, add that to the numbers, please. Officially. Let's go into game number 2, though. It's going to be Kolento now on the Demon Hunter and Zhym on the Quest Warlock. So let's see what Zhym does.
All right.
Here we go.
Let's go. Let's go, Zhym. Come on.
Just a quick breakdown. Zhym running 1 Questing Explorer, 1 Acidic Swampoos, double Abyssal Summoners.
So if anything, he should be more likely to mulligan the quest, right? And I still think it's wrong for Zhym to do so, and Zhym does hold on to it.
Now we get to go on a little journey, or quest, you might call it, to see if this card actually does anything except make Zhym play differently in the match.
Yeah.
Is that a fair way to say it?
Sure. Yeah.
Because if you're using the quest, you have to play as if you have the quest, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we'll see what happens here. Because again, I'm reinforcing at least my belief that Demon Hunter just stomps Warlock a lot of the time, regardless of whether it tries to get the quest in or not.
Hold on, I'm going to make you be very precise with your word. You think Demon Hunter stomps this matchup, or you think it's favorite matchup?
Okay, is saying it's a favorite between stomps and slight?
It's all right.
It's not like a 65% matchup.
I'll give it to you, right? 51 to 53% slight favorite, 53 to 60 big favorite, 60 plus stoppers.
Okay, big favorite, big favorite.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, sorry, I don't want to say it's a 90% matchup because that's obviously ridiculous. But we'll see. I do think it is favored though, so we'll see how it plays out so far. And early Nether Breath though is going to take down that Battle Fiend. Even the little sidekick couldn't do a good enough job to keep that one alive. But again, pretty expected, as you mentioned. Warlock doing damage in levels of 4 a lot of the time means that it just makes them use the Nether Breath as opposed to, say, a Rain of Fire and a Mortal Coil.
Yeah, and I do want to talk about Plot Twist in this matchup because it's something that I found very interesting looking up last night. Again, myself and TJ played a fairly long set testing this matchup, which I did win as the Warlock, sorry, if you want to look at it that way. And something that I noticed more and more as I was doing, as the games played out, was I was just playing my curve and ignoring I had Plot Twist in my hand. Or not ignoring it, but I was checking my quest counter every turn, and if Plot Twist didn't complete my quest, I tried to do anything else but Plot Twist, right? Just play out for board, remove the board, play a big minion if I could, drop an Abyssal Summoner if I could, all that kind of thing. And then when Plot Twist would immediately complete the quest, which is usually on about 11 or 12 cards drawn, 13 cards maybe in this matchup, I would then rip the Plot Twist and just try and out-tempo with 0-cost cards after that point. So having played like that, I was then like, well, interesting. Like, does that mean that Plot Twist is a throw in the mulligan because you're actually not going to end up playing it that early? So looking up the stats, consistently through multiple different builds of the deck and multiple different rank ranges, Plot Twist is only about the 8th, 9th, or 10th best card in the mulligan in this matchup, which really did make me consider very heavily everything I thought I knew about this deck. It's the only matchup, by the way, where Plot Twist is that low. It's specifically this one, but I did find it kind of curious.
And I think that's why, don't get me wrong, although I sound like I'm on the Warlock deck sucks kind of side, I'm not. The Warlock deck's super fun to play, and I do think it's good. I just don't think it's like literally the best Warlock deck that's ever existed, which I've seen some people tweet out. So, I think that's a little bit too hype, but we'll see. This, we mentioned though, the Vulpera, a card we were talking about a little bit over the last couple of weeks. As an inclusion to Demon Hunter. Well, if it's going to get you a second Metamorphosis against Quest Warlock, then yes, I will take one of those.
Mohawk number 1, Brood Mother number 1, okay. So Zhym here with Nether Breath in hand is probably going to want to greed that as much as possible with that Moag Artificer now, although the threat of multiple Metamorphosis now coming down is something that he's probably not quite prepared to deal with right now.
Of course it's
And he
the
did
right way.
play the undiscovered one, right? The natural Metamorphosis.
Yeah, should be, yeah.
One, yeah.
Yeah, the Vulpera one should be on the right? He played the leftmost one, pretty sure.
Now we see the old Mortal Coil to just dump a card. Something that we'll talk a lot more about if we see the Quest Warlock mirror, or even just some of the slower matchups like Rogue, potentially as well. But for dumping cards isn't normally something you get the ability to do against Demon Hunter, so interested to see there from him.
So this early Metamorphosis play from Kolento did deactivate his Gladebound a little bit. The fact that he went for it so early, I can totally get down with his plan, right? He just wants 20 damage from Metamorphosis over the next 4 turns. That totally makes sense. But maybe there was one more turn Kolento could have got through, just getting the 4 damage out of the Gladebound there as well. So now he's going to have to take a fairly slow turn with Warglaives to be able to activate the Gladebound instead.
Interestingly enough for me, the downside I can see of this Gladebound being slow is that these I-beams aren't just an instant pass on a taunt minion, right? Because they would be normally, wouldn't they? Like, you just I-beam, that's most minions just dead straight away.
Right.
You see the quest? No, Zhym. Gonna pop off now.
First draw is an Abyssal Summoner! Yep,
I mean,
sign me up!
This does mean
Huge
that these
outcome.
does he soulfire his own 2/4? Is that madness? Or godlike? I'm not sure.
It's definitely not madness. It is something that should be considered, and I think it's exactly what Zhym is considering right now. That 9/9 taunt represents 18+ lost damage if it doesn't get eye-beamed off the board right now.
Yeah. And the thing is, it's not even one eye. It changes the punish, right? From 2 eye beams to 1 eye beam if he leaves this Moag up. Because the weapon's already equipped. He is going to soul fire. Okay, Zhym. I'm impressed.
Oh, not that one, though. Not that one. That's the one he wanted. Any other card apart from Alexstrasza and... Yeah, Alexstrasza and the Abyssal Summoner there, he was probably more than happy with losing.
I think a lot of the time he'd probably like to just throw his other Soulfire, honestly. Even though it's good removal against Demon Hunter, I think his other cards cover those bases right now.
Sure.
And also,
Kolento did end up taking 18 from this 9/9 taunt, though. I think that second Soulfire might end up coming in slightly more useful.
And that's the issue, isn't it? With this Gladebound being stuck around there, imagine how insane this turn would be if the I-Beam switched active. It would be crazy powerful.
Yeah, here go both those I-Beams, though. And there's still plenty of damage to keep on trucking here from Kolento. He is by no means out of this one just yet.
Nope.
The second Metamorphosis is going to be such a huge kicker.
It is, and also as well, the I-Beams, not only are they good removal for those few taunt minions that Warlock plays, the fact it heals the Demon Hunter as well is huge, because it means you can't... Sometimes in the aggro matchups, you fight, you survive, and your opponents have about 15, and you just kill them out of nowhere. Those I-Beams help just keep things a little bit steady here for Kolento.
Zhym giving up on a bit of potential healing here just to put a wall in the way, which does make sense, because a lot of the direct damage now that Zhym feels Kolento will have left, because he does not expect to see second Metamorphosis, is, Chaos Strikes and other weapons just smashing him in the face directly. So even though this gives up some potential healing from his second plot twist, it feels like it should heal him for more in the long run anyway, as well as getting pressure represented in play to start trying to race Kolento back if that's ever a possibility.
Yeah, scary thing from Kolento, though, as well, is when you are going into exactly Warlock turn 9 and they're looking a little bit desperate, don't want to make a play like Metamorphosis and go face. Because although it might be, oh, well, if they have it, they have it. If they have exactly Alexstrasza, those are the kind of games you actually lose.
Right.
And we could see, obviously, that Zhym does have Alexstrasza, which means if he just receives a meta to the face, self-Alexes, and then swings back pretty hard next turn. I do like this Chaos Strike, at least to start the turn here for Kolento.
All I see is weakness.
Yeah, Kolento just going to try and rebuild a board here. The Chaos Strike was risky, like he needed some kind of payoff off that. If he was to whiff off the Chaos Strike, then this would be a pretty underwhelming turn overall. He'd be dropping the Satyr, but would have no real additional development alongside it, which would be pretty sketchy.
Oh, it's so scary. He doesn't know about the meta. But Netherwing is just a clear. Unless he wants to trade. The problem is with trade and Dark Skies, is it would have to be Broodmother and then you can't tap. Okay, well.
You lied.
Or you tap into Dark Skies.
Yeah. He doesn't need to trade, he can go face. I think Zhym, just for a second there, thought he had to trade. He doesn't. He's fine.
Yeah, that tap was massive.
Yeah, that was a scary looking turn for Zhym otherwise, because he had to consider, Craze Netherwinging himself down to 9, at which point 9 is a much easier number for Kolento to do straight up. This 12 is the comfort zone for Zhym right now. Zhym is just trying to force so much board tension and just lock Kolento off board so effectively that Kolento has no choice but just to start throwing damage face. And then if damage starts going face, the Alexstrasza can come down from, 3 health or 6 health or whatever it ends up being and just lock out the game.
Demons?
The problem now is, this is what I was talking about a little bit earlier, where you played the game out as the aggro deck, but somehow you're on 15, and you might just die next turn, because Warlock has cards. So I wonder now if this has to be potentially the Altruist turn. Just say I'm going to leave an Altruist on the board, my opponent has to kill it somehow, use the Soulfire, use the Breath, use the Dark Skies last turn, which was off the top, which looked desperation.
There it goes. Boom to the face. Boom. Alex Straza to the face. And now with Mali Soulfire to potentially follow this up, Kolento cannot be taking a ton of damage here, although, hang on just a second, how much damage is this?
Altruist Glaives puts it to that. Double twin slice, one swing goes in.
I grow impatient. Do you see what must be done?
Not right, not enough. Unless am I being really stupid?
4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 13. I count one off just on my very first initial count. I was going to let you roll with it, so I haven't had time.
Yeah, it's just not right because he has to hero power now. He has to hero power down the alley.
Mm-hmm.
Time grows short.
Most importantly, Zhym can survive the air. Even if he only had the Rain of Fire there, it's going to be enough. Because he does have the Soul Fire to clean this up. 9 damage, no discounts on any of these cards, but he didn't need it. And Zhym gets the win versus Kolento there. And goes to a 2-0 lead, winning the matchup of Warlock versus Demon.
Yeah, so the first time we've seen Quest Warlock go up against Demon Hunter today, that is a 100% win rate for the Quest Warlock. Okay, like, jokes aside, you saw the impact, right? Like, how big an impact does one extra removal card, one extra tempo play in your opening hand have versus life tapping into a 0-cost 9/9 taunt? Like, that, to me, feels like how you win the matchup, is you just struggle and survive and you panic for 6, 7, 8, 9 turns, and then from that point, you take over the game. And I think in that regard, like, Kolento perhaps even had a stronger draw overall than Zhym did on the other side, because he had 2 Metamorphosis locked up, he had a strong Altruist turn to go through, he had Gladebound Adept, he had Warglaives, he had everything that you could really need. Zhym's max damage output didn't really come together until he, like, top decked the Metamorphosis at the end, because it is just, you know, one of the most powerful cards in the matchup for sure. So to me, you know, that seems to reinforce the idea that you should certainly be playing your quest in that matchup where available.
Yeah, I mean, the quest, interestingly enough, the quest did get completed in a relatively early fashion, maybe even earlier than average, I would say, just off a feeling on that specific game. It felt a little bit early, but the obviously the tap into the Abyssal to make a giant minion was absolutely huge. I will say, though, Zhym's Soulfire onto the Moag, perfect, because you could see the difference, right? The difference was huge. If that Moag lives, not only does that the Abyssal Demon get decimated by the eye beams, but also Kolento just heals for twice as much, which is also absurd, right? It would have been much safer with the outcome of that game if he healed for tons more and was able to put on more pressure. And the problem is as well, and what I don't want people to get too caught up on is, yeah, Zhym hero powered into the Abyssal, right? It was probably the best hero power to go into that turn, but that's what you want the deck to do, right? It's what the whole deck's built to do, is to hero power into the big game-winning cards they're in the deck. So although it did look like arguably lucky for that one single game, there were other draws that could have made that still pretty powerful.
Yeah, and it was for sure the best one, but there's still other great cards you can get there, right? Like, just having a 0-cost Twisting Nether locked in your hand is huge. Having a 0-cost Caladan locked in your hand is huge, even if you don't use it immediately for the full board sweep. And before the Soulfire discarded it, he already had the second 9/9 taunt locked and loaded in his hand and ready to go for the following turn anyway. So kind of would have put Kolento in the same problem regardless. It just would have been a turn later. Obviously, a turn later can make all the difference, but, you know, that's what your deck's built to do, right?
Exactly,
like, you finish the quest and then you life tap. Like, that's just the goal of the deck, and a lot of your cards are insane blowouts if you get to play them for 0.
Well, let's move swiftly on into game number 3, maybe the last game of the series. And just a reminder that you can see the players' round robin scores next to their name. So both these players are 2-3 record. After this, one is going to be 2-4, and then one is going to be 3-3. Huge, maybe even world of difference there between these two players. Zhym currently leading 2-0, now going on this Druid Whereas Kolento is going to be on a favorite build of Rogue here for Sol. The Stealth Rogue with the Greyheart Mage.
Yeah, not in this matchup though, Raven. There's not a build of the deck that I would call my favorite in this matchup.
Mine's the Van Cleef build with full mulligan for Shadow Steps and things.
Excellent point. Yep. Yeah, I'll reiterate the point I made at the start of this series as well. It's just that this is now a match in hand for both of these two players because the other players around them on 2 wins have 6 matches under their belt already, whereas this is the match for both of these players. So it's very, very clearly the difference between a little bit of breathing room and just being right the way down there with the bottom players in the division.
Zhym's hand is looking like it's shaping up pretty well so far. He's not got the big payoff cards yet, but simply having access to Overflow, as soon as he draws a Mount Cellar or a Glowfly Swarm, he's looking fantastic as he has all of the support cards available. But Kolento does have some time.
A cruel fate awaits you in the ash.
He does, and he also now has a Shadow Step. And praise Galakron, step the Greyheart Sage, replay the Greyheart Sage. Edwin Van Cleef next turn. That's looking hard to beat.
I think now Zhym needs to focus on maybe using these Rising Winds as hard card draw. As I said, his hand is great as a support hand. He needs one of the payoff cards for this. He's going to make minions, okay. I'm quite surprised with this.
Well, if he goes all in with the card draw, the second one's still the Twin Spell version, so he's going to run into some hand size issues if he doesn't, like, at least dump 1 card this turn.
Oh, sure, I just would have thought he would have drawn 1 first.
Mm-hmm.
Just to see what he got, right?
Right.
Maybe it doesn't really change too much because he always wants to play both Rising Winds. I don't know, you never know. If he's going to draw now, then why not draw first? Now he's going to make the minions. This opens... Oh, okay. If he's doing this, this is just opening him up for, Overflow. Okay. This makes way more sense now. It's
also
definitely another way you can do it.
Play around that disaster scenario I was talking about. Of course, Kolento still has insane options to make a huge Van Cleef this turn, but I think Shadow Stepping the Greyheart Sage, even though it gives you 2/2 less on your Van Cleef a lot of the time, the 2 extra cards in hand can quite often just make up for that.
And also, he could have traded the Spy Mistress, right? Whereas now, there are 2 minions facing him down, and if he wants to Shadow Step the Spy Mistress maybe, then he could, he's going to slow down a little bit there. He could just Shadow Step a Lackey.
Yeah, it's most likely going to be a Lackey that gets stepped here, but Kolento doesn't really have the premium options. Yeah. Draconic Lackey, not really a value-based matchup. Titanic Lackey, not a huge impact on the board right now.
Giving the Spy Mistress some health might actually be alright.
Choose soon.
Again, not premium, as you said, but I think actually making this just not die to literally anything at all. Oh, and Zhym knows. He sees the Shadow Step. Not the best target in the world for a double Titanic Lackey, so he knows what's coming up next.
I guess Titanic does end up being more relevant here than I first thought, because not only is it buffing up the Spy Mistress, it's also protecting that Edwin from the 6 attack that's on board, which is a very big deal. No payoff card here, found off the Overflow.
Nothing. Zhym has had all the cards you want if you have one of the minion generation cards in your hand.
Right.
He's not got to any of them. And Zhym is running the Ysera, he's running double Mount Cellar and double Glowfly. And he's not got to any of them.
I will act as your scapegoat.
And this is so much pressure now. How do you stop an 11-10 Edwin trucking through you?
Outside of this being exactly Mount Cellar, you just don't, do you? There are no Ironbarks either. You can't even just taunt up and hope the Edwin has to trade. But we can see double Eviscerate, of course, is going to hack through most minions anyway. But this is the issue, right? This is part of, maybe this is an extreme example. This is part of what I was talking about right at the start when I was saying Druid either feels like it dominates a game or gets absolutely wrecked. I never feel there's an in-between moment for Druid.
Innovate,
go for those
Fungal Fortunes, gonna look for Ironbark, sure.
Got to do something, hasn't he?
Yeah. Doesn't find it, try again.
Oh. So we saw Ysera in bottom 14? And
wow.
Mount Seller there at the bottom 10. That's just the game you're not going to win, especially with the help of that Van Cleave. Kolento starts his fight back, making a win there with the Rogue over the Druid. And honestly, Zhym didn't get to play much of a game of Hearthstone. Although, I guess to a certain extent, you could think about was planning for the overflow better than just using the initial card draw from the Rising Winds to just cycle faster, as opposed to, using a turn to play the minions and empty the hand, using another turn to get the overflow, and then have to have whatever, like the Mount Seller say, and then hope you had other support cards, because you used a Moonfire, Crystal Power, 2 Rising Winds, all to just set up that overflow, and the overflow, when you're just casting it with nothing already on board, is a slow turn in itself, right?
It is, but I think it makes sense there because he ends up innovating or coining into the overflow. It's not like he could Rising Winds to find himself a Mount Seller and then have his pop-off turn immediately after that, because he wouldn't have 7 natural mana. So you can't really have a strong Mount Seller turn when you don't have 7 natural mana. So dump hand, play overflow, draw the Mount Seller off the overflow, and then use your actual natural turn 7 to have that pop-off turn. It seems like the smartest way to play the curve to me.
Yeah, and it did just one of those games where it just didn't quite pay off, and that's one of the problems, I guess, with Spell Druid is you need one of the tools to build around, whether that's Glowflies, whether that's Mount Seller, whether that's Ysera, you need something, or you're just playing a lot of cards that don't really do much.
Is the business from Zhym. Kolento holds on to a Dark Skies. Does find the plot twist early. Very nice. Dark Skies often able to deal with smaller Glowfly boards earlier on, or if you are able to get a Rain of Fire alongside it, that can even clear up the big one.
Yeah, for me, this matchup relies on that card that we just saw get thrown to the side. The Mount Seller really is the MVP in this matchup here. Not only is it generation of different health size threats, which is nice, but really is just killing that Mount Seller is quite difficult to do as Warlock, outside of the biggest of Moag Nether Breaths, because often, in a perfect world at least, you want to iron back your Mount Seller, which makes it demand insane levels of removal from the Warlock.
Right.
I wonder.
Zhym now kind of an awkward spot on whether to cycle or whether to remove, because it's kind of similar, right? Like you can cycle to make sure that your spell size is still high in hand, so you get a full board of Glowflies. If there's a 2/2 on the other side of the board, well then you might as well not have one of your Glowflies anyway.
Right. What a waste.
Unlucky.
Although we are going to see a fairly comfortable plot twist here from Kolento. Especially because he's not going to see the Innovate Glowfly this turn. It's going to be just Overgrowth for Zhym. Which I do like, by the way. I don't think you need to rush out the Glowflies particularly here.
He does now have activated Netherwing and an Alexstrasza in his hand. So maybe there's a slight thought of hanging on to the hand you've got there. But yeah, it's a pretty glorious plot twist. So you probably just go ahead and take it.
You know what he doesn't have, Saul? Hero power that gives him 0.
It's a great point.
I think most importantly, though, as seeing the ramp, I think Kolento now is less scared of Glowfly and more scared of a Mount Seller turn. And
that's true.
The Crazed Netherwing doesn't necessarily do much against Mount Seller. Again, you're looking for Calidan, you're looking for the big Netherwings with the Moags, and to a certain extent, looking for Twisted Nether, but that's a little bit far away.
I don't like this Glowfly from Zhym.
Into turn 5 after a plot twist.
just feel like in this matchup, like Glowfly is really your go-to with like a Soul of the Forest immediately afterwards. Whereas they're just like ramping and just dropping a nice early Ysera Unleash, like seemed fine to me. He didn't even really need to play the ramp if he didn't want to, because he just has Innovate Unleashed on the following turn anyway. I guess he's saying he can do that anyway, plus give the threat check over for the Crazed Netherwing at the same time. Which, sure.
It's tough, right? Because for me, I think I would have looked... If I was going to play Glowfly, I think I would have just played it. And then moved on. You know, not use the
Not
buffs,
drop the power on it. Yeah.
Not drop the Ironbark. Because the Ironbark on the Ysera, how is that killed? It's just not from Warlock half the time, right?
Yeah. So he would also have the option to pass one turn, and then I think he could have gone like Glowfly into Power, Innovate Power, or something like that. And then had 4 health Glowflies on board. You give your opponent one turn where they're like free to develop on the board, but Kolento shuffled his coin back into his deck, and he only plays 1 Abyssal Summoner. So the chance you get coin Abyssal Summoner there with Kolento's free turn, which is the only thing you're scared of, is pretty low. And then you get a giant... Go on.
You're scared of Rain of Fire and Netherwing. Is that too much?
Rain of Fire, Netherwing? Sure. Yeah, I mean, okay, that's a clear. But point being, it makes your Glowfly board much, much harder to clear, and then you still curve into Ysera Unleashed the turn afterwards.
Again, for me, I think just playing the Glowflies is fine. If they have the AoE, fine.
Yeah.
It's not your main way to win the game, at least in my experience.
Yeah,
Whereas
sure.
I think getting to this, like, give this Ysera more health than it needs a Calidan, pretty much, because as we can see, he's doing it too fast for Kolento to Twisting Nether, but also, Kolento's not going to want to Twisting Nether just a Ysera. So this becomes just a massive minion that Kolento's just going to get hit by every turn.
Boy, 4/12s are annoying for this deck to deal with.
Fire everything and everyone! Everything and everyone!
Kolento, 0 heal value, but excellent removal value. Overflow off the top for Zhym. His hand had absolutely nothing going on there, and now suddenly all of the riches he could ever dream of are about to find their way into his hand. These dragons are small.
This Crystal Power's going to do work, though. Just a reminder, in case you're not familiar, Moag effect here is board wide on both sides. That means these Bog Beam, this Crystal Power, are going to clean these up.
Okay, that overflow changes everything for Zhym here. Because not only is he now going to have the consistent dragon pressure, it also means that the second Kolento whiffs on any kind of removal whatsoever and a board gets left up, then Zhym can just drop his Soul of the Forest onto this board once he draws it, alongside even the second Glowfly that he has in board as well. And Soul of the Forest is really where this deck struggles. It's why, you know, Terran and Serpent Egg are insane in Warrior against this deck. Like, you just don't deal with Death Rattles when you're playing Quest Warlock. You just don't have any cards that do it. You're just going to Power of the Wild Overflow again?
Wants to set up for the big payoff turn with a Mount Seller.
Yeah, I was going to say, what if you just get your Mount Seller board nethered if there's a nether? And then you go for dragons again after that with the card draw.
What if you Wild Growth Overflow? Is that crazy? We have too much. Oh, he's gonna... Most importantly, I think like whipping the Wild Growth in, you can get that 0-cost spell, is actually going to be really nice for Zhym.
So Zhym probably only wants 2 or so dragons here. He doesn't want too many coming out. 2 or 3 seems very reasonable.
Right, it's about, definitely want to stop now. He could. Have the old cheeky Moonfire to the face, I like.
Yep, that seems pretty ideal from Zhym's perspective, sorry. Tons of pressure on board, but still tons of resources remaining if Twisting Nether were to come down.
And you love to see it, though, as well, because there are really there are 3 outcomes to this turn. Kolento either just did or does tap into Calidan. and clear the board. Kolento has Twisted Nether, in which he doesn't get to tap post-quest. Fantastic if you're the Druid player. Or, Kolento doesn't have any of these things and plays a bad turn, and then you hit them very hard and probably win the game. So, really, this outcome for Zhym is just setting him up to just have almost a win-win-win scenario.
Win-win-win.
Win-win-win-win.
There's the soul.
Yep, much better hand to continue these threats.
Oh, and this soul is just so disgusting when you're playing Warlock against this. Savage Roar to back it up as well after this comes down.
He can even drop the Iron Bark if he really wanted to, if he's worried about some kind of combination of Moag. Oh no, both Moags are gone actually, never mind.
Both Moags are gone, yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, Moag Rain of Fires can cause havoc here, but they can't. They're gone. Use them to kill just the Ysera.
And one Netherwing's gone as well, so there's no Netherwing coin Netherwing.
Absolute nightmare, but this deck can be tricky for Warlock to deal with.
Yep.
And we're seeing why right now.
Okay, so if you life tap, you have 7. You can then coin back to 8. Plot twist, you still only have 6, and it doesn't work. Trying to find, like, Dark Skies plus Celadan in the same turn somehow, but you have to draw a 0-mana Celadan and a plot twist to be able to make that happen, which just can't happen.
And one thing I've not jumped on quite yet, but I'm sure I will over the weekend, is there are 2 cards in hand that are just not live right now, which is the Alexstrasza and the Zephrys, which are doing nothing at all. Double taunt now for Kolento as he did get the Brood with it.
Yep.
It's something. You have a coin out to use? Is that madness? Just another thing to maybe make some trades a bit better, make some clears a bit easier.
Oh, portal number 1 down the drain. Okay, stops there though.
How many does he have left now? Is it 3, 2?
1.
1?
Mm-hmm.
I was just counting down.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
I don't think so. I don't think he can get everything through. He needs every attack to go face for it to be lethal, and I don't believe that's possible.
Okay. Always got to ask yourself. Or at least I do. As soon as Savage Roar's locked in on a big health turn, I'm like, wait.
Hold on. Does Zhym know something I don't here? What's the remainder of his deck at this point?
Crystal Palm.
Because he draws it guaranteed. There was only 4 cards left. So I'm assuming he sees a guaranteed lethal here with the remaining cards in his deck. Is he just pushing and just saying this board
25,
gets
I think.
Okay.
26 for the Moonfire.
Fair enough. So he's just pushing and saying this board gets there. I think that's very reasonable as well.
But again, it's the age-old problem, isn't it? Can Kolento actually just clear this board with the cards he has available? Probably not, right?
Right.
Like, the cards just don't exist. And even if he does, there's a chance. So he's got Moonfire for 1 damage, Hero Power for another. He's still got Mount Seller to summon some beasts.
Possibilities.
He's also still 2 draws away from any Highlander card shenanigans being active.
Right.
So no hope there either. Well, he can tap and hit his second plot twist, and then with plot twist, all things are possible. But I still don't know what the out is. He'd already have tapped, yeah. I'm thinking like plot twist and then tap and hit the 0-mana Alexstrasza that's active, and then 2 dragons scam a win for you somehow, but you would have already tapped at that point to draw the plot twist, so even that doesn't work.
Almost out of time.
And this is where the matchup gets scary, because it's easy for us to say, oh, let's go back. If he had Moags, maybe there's a chance. Then he would have just left a Ysera
4-12, yeah.
that punching him every single turn of the game. You know, so like there's no good answer, is there? And I think that's why the matchup is so well suited to Druid. Is it puts all the odd-shaped threats against him at the same time. And the cards just don't really exist here.
2, 4, 6, 7, dead on board. Okay.
great play-by-play.
It was, yeah. Kolento passed the turn back. He wasn't going to give it up there, but he was just dead on board. And that is, as we kept saying, Raven, an enormous victory for Zhym, as he now keeps parity with the players around him who have finished out their 6 matches, him now having got there as well. But Kolento is now in serious trouble. He needs favors from elsewhere if he's going to get out of this one.
Yeah, and as we said at the start of the day, all you can do going into this weekend, the final weekend of round robin before relegations and relegation brackets and playoffs are all decided next week. All you have to do, or the best you can do, is win your match, right? And unfortunately, in every situation, someone has to lose. But when it is a match against 2 players that are so low on that bracket and in that division, there's going to be someone who comes off way, way worse, and that was Kolento this time. I do think Zhym played very well, though. Again, I just go back to that Moag Soulfire against Demon Hunter.
That was sweet,
was potentially just the game-winning play, because then would Kolento have had time to really make use of those metamorphoses, because he would have healed for more. So I do think props to Zhym there. I think he's played very well. And again, anyone who's playing well with this Quest Warlock has my respect, because the deck is hard to manage. And honestly, the players haven't had a lot of time to manage that anyway. So pretty crazy overall. We do have a Silvername and Felk.
We should be.
Yeah,
we certainly should be, Raven. I don't know what production are trying to pull on us right now.
Keep us on our toes, just like I did with my internet earlier. I guess that's the answer to that one. But we do have a couple more matches for you guys. It is only a 4-match day here over in the European region, but we do have Americas coming up after us a little bit later on, as always, and that'll be the case all weekend. So plenty of Hearthstone for you guys here. We can just briefly touch on this anyway, whether we're going to a break or not. But we do see a Demon Hunter